Welcome to the informational meeting. Our first item on the agenda is the City Council staff reports from Deborah Owen, our City Clerk.
Good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. I just have to say no report. Thank you.
Next item is Mayor Munson. Did you have anything? Save till later? Okay. Audit Committee.
Audit Committee, no report. We're going to meet March 25th, 4 o'clock, if you're interested.
Fiscal Committee.
The Fiscal Committee will meet next Monday afternoon after the informational meeting and get an update on record retention process that we're in, and with the goal of having that completed by the end of March.
Thank you. Land Use Committee.
On behalf of the Land Use, no report, and I don't think we're meeting today either.
Public Service Committee.
No report.
City Council open discussion. Any items? Wow, quiet group. Okay. Then we'll move right into the presentations. The only presentation we have scheduled today is a 2009 preliminary financial results and 2010 contingency plan by Director Rowenhorst.
Good afternoon, Gene Rowenhorst, Director of Finance. What we're going to do today, we're going to be presenting the preliminary numbers for the 2009 year-end financial results. They will be final when Ide Bailey actually signs off on the report. They have not done that yet, but the numbers are, we believe, preliminary, we'll say at this point, we believe they're okay. Then we're going to take a look at the 2010 results as far as a plan that was put together. If you recall, we talked about this back, I believe, like an October time frame, that the administration would present a plan for the 2010 year and make adjustments as needed to deal with the adjustments that have happened in the economy. Mainly, we're going to be talking about the general operating fund. That pays for most of the day-to-day expenses of running the city. That includes public safety, snow removal, pothole patching, and park maintenance, along with a lot of other programs and services that provide services to an abundance of people. Our general fund is funded mostly by city property taxes and the first penny that we collect on the sales tax. As you know, the sales tax was down from 2008. Other revenues were also slightly down for a total shortfall of 6.8% versus a budget shortfall of $8.1 million. When revenues fall, we have two choices that we can deal with the situation. We can reduce spending, or we can use our reserve funds. The administration chose to focus on reducing spending and minimize the impact to the reserve fund. By reducing spending through 2009, expenditures came in $7.1 million, or 5.9% below the budget. I want to recognize all of the departments, the department heads, for their efforts throughout the year in achieving these reductions, despite the major year-end snow event. It's not easy to make up for revenues taking such a sharp decline, and the directors did so in a way that they still provided excellent services to our citizens. This is a closer look to how we achieved the reductions in each of the service areas. Some of these reductions are due to typical turnover. However, most of them are due to department managing spending throughout the year. And I think it should be pointed out that the directors and their staff and the complete staff of the City of Sioux Falls should be given kudos for doing an excellent job of taking a situation on and keeping us on track so that we've met our goals. We ended 2009 with an unreserved fund balance of $41.1 million after using just under $1 million in reserves. Were it not for the $2 million snow event at the end of the year, we would have actually turned in a surplus. As we are talking about an overall general operating budget of $119 million, we used less than 1% of the overall budget in order to balance. And as I want to point out, that snow event just before Christmas cost us somewhere in the area of $2 million, maybe a little more. And we just didn't have enough planned to cover that kind of an event. We took care of about half of it, but not all of it. We want to also look at our operating reserve position as it relates to our target level. As you probably remember, the reserve target is 25%. This is a point-in-time calculation done at the end of the year, December 31. As it stands right now, we are at 33% to the forward-looking, so we actually are looking at, in this situation, looking forward. The reserves are 33.5% in a forward-looking 2010 budget, so we can remain solidly above the target. We build up reserves to use in times such as these, in which we have both a substantial drop in revenue and major one-time snow expenses. Looking at the operating reserves, it should be noted that this is the first time in the last 3 years that we have used the fund balance. Otherwise, in the last 3 years, we've actually put money back into the fund. The black line represents the targeted reserve level of 25%. At no point in the last 8 years did we dip below that level, and given that we adopted budgets without the use of reserves over the last 2 years, we were operating from a position of strength and going into this economic downturn. As you look at this chart, you will notice that the increase in the fund balance between 2007 and 2008 was over $5 million. In 2009, we only used one-fifth of the money put in 2008 to balance the budget. Now we'll take a look at how the capital program fared this year. We all know these are projects funded through the second penny, sales tax, and such as streets, parks, and large equipment purchases. In the capital budget results, as with the first penny, there was a significant shortfall of the $7.2 million. It's the same in both funds now. We were fortunate to have many bids that came in better than anticipated, which helped offset the shortfall. In addition, we carried forward projects for one reason or another that were not completed in 2009. We ended with a fund balance in the capital program of $1.3 million. Normally, these leftover funds would be available for other supplemental projects, but in this case, we're choosing to apply the $1.3 million to the projected sales tax shortfall in 2010. This means that we will not have to suspend as many projects due to the lower sales tax. To summarize our 2009, it was a story of decreasing revenues that required us to carefully manage expenses throughout the year. Because our departments did an excellent job in managing expenses, we are still in a very solid reserve position. And of course, the year-ended snow was the wrench in our plan. Had it not been for this, we would have had ended with the year with a general operating surplus. Now that takes care of 2009. Are there any questions specifically dealing with 2009?
Gene, and the $1.3 million of unobligated balance, you're essentially just going to use that for the projected shortfall of 2010?
Right.
What was the shortfall projected in 2010? I mean, we had our capital, we had our...
We don't have a shortfall in the second penny. I'm not sure we're communicating.
Well, that's what I mean. You said we're going to use it for the projected shortfall, but I didn't think we had a projected shortfall in the capital program.
Well, you do have $7.2 million.
From 2009?
Yes.
Okay, that's, okay. So you're going to go back and pick up,
And we're
2009.
Yeah, whatever, you'll see later on here in the 2010, we use that 1.3 million to make up the shortfall that we've got in 2010. That's part, the 1.3 million is part of it. There's a lot of other stuff in there, but that's part of it.
got it. Thank you.
Other questions? Although we're hopeful that we have hit bottom in our revenue, our revenues will grow in 2010. We are currently not anticipating any quick rebound in our sales tax collections. Our budget management is guided by how we balance providing essential services with the maintaining of a solid operating reserve. The 2010 budget was adopted showing a $5.3 million use of reserves for budgetary purposes. After we factor in the typical budgetary savings for forecasted to actual uses in the estimated $3.5 million in reserves, we are still targeted at $3.5 million as forecasted in spite of the fact that we know our reserves will be lower. Looking at the 2010 budget, originally it was a budget of $117 million for revenue and $122 million for expenses, and that's the $5.3 million that the council approved in their budget back in September, October. And $3.5 million forecasted use of funds balance. The difference there is $1.3 million. And what that difference is between the 5.3 and the 3.5 is the amount forecast use of fund balance. That is the amount between when our 5.3 million is the actual budget difference, but there's always a 5% amount in there that we can't use because we can't spend money that close to the end, so we anticipated having actually 3.5 million is what we would actually use of fund balance, and that's where the 1.3 comes from. The estimated revenue shortfall is 6.5 million, so we have a total targeted reduction, and this is on the 2010 operating of $8.3 million that we'd have to deal with. You can see that the estimated 3.5 million forecasted use of fund balance on the fourth line. For contingency planning purposes, we used a 2% drop in the sales tax revenue from the actual results of 2009. So we think we're getting pretty conservative on how we're going with our number for the 2010 revenue. This is a fairly conservative approach, but we would rather plan for lower growth and adjust upwards rather than adjusting downwards. In our operating contingency, plan is based on planning, preparing, and prioritizing. We have been strategically planning reductions in spending since the beginning of the year. And if we start making extreme reductions, citizens are going to be significantly impacted. Instead, we want to reduce spending in a very specific, targeted way that will minimize service impact as much as possible. The departments have identified spending reductions that may be adjusted throughout the year. Without this flexibility, we could end up using more reserves than forecasted or may reduce too many services when our citizens need them the most. The targeted reductions may be adjusted as conditions change. We have worked to prioritize the impacts of our budget reductions to minimize the impact to the reserves. That's not to say there won't be noticeable changes, because there will be. One thing we do know about the plan is it will be different when you get to the end of the year. Our contingency plan, here's the initial details of the plan. Because we are service-oriented, the major expense in our city budget is personnel. So for the first elements of the spending reduction, we must be in wages and staffing growth. The mayor has instructed that no cost of living adjustments be given to those employees that are not governed by an existing labor contract. That includes all of the mayor's appointed officials and all the mid-management. In addition, this will be the second year in a row that the mayor's appointed staff officials will not receive merit increases. We have also factored in normal attrition savings from personnel. In addition, each department has identified other operating reductions until we know we have revenues are coming in for how they're coming in for the year. Initial reductions will involve delaying certain repairs and maintenance and reducing employee training and development. You will also likely see changes to hours of operating and events in some city departments, particularly in the spring and summer seasons when we need to make those reductions now or they won't be available for savings later in the year. Parks is a prime example. They're just at the point of putting together their catalog, if you will, of activities for the summer, and they have to make decisions now which ones are going to be impacted, and they're in the process of doing that.
Councilor Staggers.
Yes, Gene, last year, the city, I think, hired 20 new people. And so in 2010 here, we're going to talk about normal attrition savings. Is there any way, I'm just assuming that we might not be hiring for new positions when people are leaving. Can we anticipate how many people that might be?
We haven't put it in terms of FTE at this point. We've got a number out there that will be used for savings, and I think you'll see it a little bit later on. This plan is being done at a macro level right now. As far as getting real detailed and real specific, like I say, the one thing we know about the plan is it's going to change between now and December 31st of 2010. And right now, we're using our best senses that we can to come up with a plan that we can deal with on a, like I say, on a macro basis at this point. Mm-hmm. Part of which includes not rehiring certain numbers of individuals when a vacancy occurs.
Councilor Bettinger.
Gene, on your reductions in the street department, you're showing a $1.5 million reduction, and obviously everybody's concerned about the condition of the streets after the ridiculous winter we've had. Is that $1.5 million for new streets, or is that repair and maintenance of existing streets?
This is operating streets
Only?
money. So by operating money, it's going to be primarily repairs and maintenance. Any kind of major rebuilds or new streets are in the second penny.
I think we're going to have some real trouble with the whole issue of repair and maintenance taking money out of that particular category when, in fact, we're probably going to need more to keep the streets to the condition that we expect and have had in the past.
I can't give you an answer to that right now. This is just our plan that we put together. Mr. Cotter put together the numbers on this, and I'm not sure that this is all of the 1.5 million. You're dealing with this 7%.
Right.
Is that what you're talking about?
Is there any way that we can get more detail?
Yes,
from,
there is. And there will-
Mr. Cotter
yes,
on
yes.
that particular issue?
There will, yes, there is, and we can get him to share a macro level report on what some of the details are for that.
I think we'd like to have that as soon as possible, because I think that's an issue that we need to talk about.
Okay.
Councilor Jameson.
Just brings up kind of an interesting question. I was wondering, ultimately, the mayor's office is responsible for meeting these goals and meeting our budget, the budget he projected. Whose decision does it come to? I mean, is it ultimately the mayor's, or is it something we have a chance to weigh in on and say, we want more money spent on roads, or is it something?
Well, this is the mayor's budget,
It's up to him to decide.
and it's yes. It's,
Okay, I'm sure.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Councilor Lutz.
I too noticed that what Gerald caught, and it would seem intuitive to make that assumption that that money should stay there and in fact go up. But I recall that for the last 3 years we have put money into that fund, and I know right now the roads seem bad, but I would tend to believe that we would have to get out there and actually do the repairs and kind of track it as we go along before we'd actually know that. Like I say, it seems natural to think that, but I'm not convinced that we automatically put money into that at this point. I'd wait until probably midsummer to reassess the situation to find out where you're really at. And that's just a comment.
Councilor Bennigan.
Well, we'll have that discussion later. I guess it more than seems like they're in bad shape. I think the issue is that we need to make that a priority and something that the community probably is most aware of on a daily basis and the most that we probably hear about. So I think we need to plan for those changes in the near future.
And you'll see some more of that. One thing to keep in mind, 70% of the second penny, and I guess this isn't the second penny, but 70% of the second penny goes for streets. That's a huge number that has been put into streets already. It's a big number.
If I recall, too, just a point of reference, I think there's $1 million in the capital program for reconstruction and joint repair and $5 million in overlay out of the capital program.
But at this time, these are holdbacks that, we can, as depending on what happens as we move forward with the sales tax, we can make adjustments as we move forward. So these are what we had to make on the best assumptions we have today with the economy where it's at.
And I think what I hear Councilor Benning and others probably asking for is specifically that $1.5 million out of the general fund that we're looking at reduction. What is that?
Yeah, we'll get that.
More detail on that.
We'll get that detail. Again, these are for planning purposes, and this may not be the way that they ultimately look at the end of the year. But each service area has identified reductions. These are targeted reductions that preserve our priorities and focus on essential services. Now we'll take a look at the contingents at the...
Gene, would you, before we go into the capital program, can you go back to slide 15? Or, I don't know if it's slide 15 or page 8 on our sheet, slide 15, the 2010 operating budget where you've got the $117 million.
Yes?
Revenues, okay. I still need help with this number. I understand the top three. I don't understand the bottom three. Where we've got the 3.5, the forecasted use of fund balance, and then off to the right of it, which was...
That leaves you at 1.8, and so that leaves you at 1.8 that you're chasing. And then you've got another estimated revenue shortfall of 6.5 million, so your total comes up to 8.3. That's the total number that we're chasing. And if you look back on page 18 then, under the 2010 reductions, that's the 8.3 million spread across the various departments.
Okay, so the 8.3 is the 5 million that was already budgeted in.
Yes.
And then, so you're anticipating another 3.2 million in shortfall.
Yes.
Or
I think I'm right.
3 million anyways. Would it be possible to get because when we did our 2010 budget, we were halfway through 2009, it seems to me we were working off a number that was a growth factor of 2% for 2009 and then 4% for 2010. But now, since we actually have 2009 actual numbers, would it be possible to get a comparison from our 2009 actual to what we're projecting?
Yes, we can do that for you.
think it might be easier to understand.
Okay. Did you make a note of that, Tim? You get that? We can get that.
Thank you. I think we're ready to move on to the capital plan.
Very good. In combination with the unreserved fund balance of $1.3 million in 2009, and the 2010 plan requires us to find $5.3 million in additional capital suspensions. You can see what the chart is showing you there. The budgeted resources of 48.5, the revised resources that we're going to have is going to be 4.2 million. So you're chasing 5.6 million there at that point, and then another 3 million is taken off due to a change in the debt service. We got some bonds running off, so the debt service actually goes down. So we're chasing 5.3 million in available resources for the year. To achieve the necessary suspensions, we continue to look at reductions on a priority basis. You'll probably recall the streets make up about 70% of the approved second penny 2010 capital program, while the other departments divide up the rest. So that's a big chunk that's going in the streets already. That is still the case in our revised plan. The major change, to give you some indication of how it's working, the major change to the streets program is that we are shifting a project at 69th and Tallgrass to 2011. That's good for $2.2 million. The state's going to have a project in there at the same time, and we will simply do our work at the same time the state's doing theirs, rather than having ours done up front. We're also doing one less block of 8th Street downtown, the downtown area, and moving this back to a future year. And we anticipate favorable bids for River Boulevard for the arterial streets project. We believe that we have found a way to manage the decrease in revenue and still have our good street attentions we know they deserve. Another one, looking at Parks and Recreation, what they're doing, the Arboretum is getting pushed back. The bike trail and development reconstruction, they actually have come up with some other funding for the bikes trail, some gifts, I guess, that will take care of that, along with other funds. And then there's some miscellaneous ones there at Elmwood, Lions Park, and downtown Parks, $33,000. So Parks is offering up $710,000. Then on slide 24, if you look at give you some sense of what other departments are doing, there's some improvements at the annex at City Hall downtown is $56,000. A truck and air compressor for the fire department. I think you can look at these. The biggest one is library books for $265. We may be able to work that back into the bond funds that are left over. We got good bids on the bonds for the library, and we could use the library money in the bond fund until it's used up. There's going to be money left over. So I'd like to point out, if you take the $4 million on highways and streets, the $710,000 in parks, and the $581,000 in other, you add those up, that comes to that $5.3 million that we're chasing. To conclude, we know we need to continue to focus on planning, preparing, and prioritizing. We know the economic environment will continue to change this year, and we need to stay focused on our financial goals to put us in the best position possible to tackle our 2011 budget. We understand the priorities need to be reevaluated throughout the year to adjust to changing conditions, but we hope we've communicated how seriously we take our budget management in every department and how we're working together to execute this plan. So the bottom line is you've got an excellent staff of directors, and they've got an excellent staff of people surrounding them that have done an incredible job of pulling things into line for '09, and they put together a plan that they understand that it's flexible, but and it may be changed, but they put together a plan that will be monitored through the rest of the year very closely, particularly looking at how our revenue streams come in. Any questions?
Gene, I have a question for you. Back on the library books and AV items, so that 260, almost 266,000, that was,
That does not come out of sales tax, then.
right, which,
Comes out of bond proceeds.
right, so was that originally programmed out of sales tax, but we have leftover money
Yes.
from the bonds, so we're going to
Yes.
use bond money instead?
Leftover bond money is what you're going to be using.
Okay, so they're really not sacrificing anything, they're just using an alternative source of payment?
Well, if you want to, I don't know if I'd characterize it as a sacrifice, but
Yeah, I mean, they're,
but
I mean,
that's where the money is coming from, is from the bond proceeds. It'll be.
and it was originally, was
And
it
I don't
also?
know that it'll be the entire 200 and some thousand.
Okay.
We just, at this point, we're anticipating that this amount will be left, but we'll see when all the smoke settles.
And was that originally in OSEP?
No,
No.
it was in CIP with the bond issue.
Councilor Staggers?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to say something about the 2009, how well the city did at that time. I know in 2009, most of us were very concerned about, the drop in revenue, and to see that we have an ending unreserved fund balance of $41.1 million, I think you did a fantastic job, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilor Jameson?
Maybe more so for the mayor, if I could. Dave, I know you've got a short time left, and do you predict that the next mayor is really going to have more involvement on making new priorities for the adjustments that will be made? Will that be, you've only got 60 days or something left. Will you think that most of that will fall in the next mayor's hands?
Well, I think we put together a good plan. I think that's what we try to do, because I think you're seeing a whole different world out there now. We went through where, we could have a lot of programs. I'm not talking just Sioux Falls. I'm talking whether it's the state, the federal government. I think we went through years that we were given a lot. I think now you're going through lean years where you may be taking things away. And so I think, we tried to put this together as we looked at the year, as how's it going, and it's a year of challenges. So we really looked at what's the least impact. And as you move through this, if the economy doesn't start going up, the impact, people will notice it. So you're going to have to decide it. But I think the next mayor, you're going to have to do it. But we want to preserve what we have now as far as the unobligated cash balance, so that everything we can do now in 10, or what the next mayor can do in 10, and is going to help put the 11 budget together. So hopefully, working with the next mayor, working with the directors that we have, because they put an incredible amount of time in on this to come up to what the plan they have today. Hopefully they can, work through what they have to do, and there's just not a lot of room in there. Quite frankly, everybody gave up quite a bit, and so you'll see that. So, they'll have they can do, I guess, what they want. If the next mayor comes in, they can pretty much feel how they want to move around. But hopefully we put together a good enough plan that we follow that will help us in the 11 budget, because the 11 budget will be something they'll be working on right away.
Well, the one other question is the comments about all the departments making adjustments and cuts and moving with this budget. What about the city council? Has our budget changed? Have we done the same dance that you're doing?
We don't deal with that.
Well, okay, here, the rest of us, what are we going to do? Are we going to do anything, or should we? I mean, it probably seems right.
Deborah owns it. I could probably address that a little bit. We tend to turn back funds. We have some funds that we can use under consulting that we would use when you have a retreat to set your goals and objectives, and we would tend to turn back those funds. We did that last year. We would probably do that. That'd be our first option, would be just simply not to use those funds.
I would just add to that, in our budget for 2010, of course, we've got the election scheduled. Certainly, we don't have a lot of discretion in that. All of our salaries are based on charter, which we don't have zero discretion in that as well. So our budget is, how much, what was our budget, Deborah?
It's a little over $1 million. I think the entire city budget's about 336 to 400, depending on the year.
Yes. But our budget's somewhere around $1 million.
About $1 million.
And
most of that's
You
personnel.
start whittling out these things that we have no control about. It. We don't, we're not going to balance the shortfall on the backs of the city council. It's just not going to happen.
No, I don't think that's not what I meant. But I'm just sensing that we'd better probably have some skin in the game, I think, somewhere. I mean, I don't want to see my salary cut, and I guess it doesn't sound like we can't, but it just makes sense. I'm just saying.
Well, I'll look forward to your recommendations.
I don't know if I have any, but I think maybe we should all talk about it.
Councilor Brown?
It might be good at our fiscal committee meeting next week just to review the budget and see where we're at, if Deborah could bring that to
Certainly.
us.
And again, the most likely areas to cut would be the areas to not use your consultants that you can use when we have the retreats. Obviously, we need to have new goals and objectives, with half of the council being new in May of 2010 of this year, but we can scale back those. Those are easier places to find. Obviously, those funds are committed, and the rest of it's personnel or the cost for legal publishing. And that hasn't changed in state law yet, so that's about all we spend money on.
There's some travel dollars we could look at as well.
There are some that you can choose to not travel. Some of those were turned back last year in that same effort.
Councilor Bannigan?
Well, before everybody starts jumping ship and worried about the negativity of the economy, and I agree that it's difficult, once in a while, I think it's good to look back and decide and review where we were when we started 8 years ago. 8 years ago, we were at about 35% of our budget was in reserve, and we had $29.5 million. Currently, right now, we have $41.1 million, which is 33.5%, which is still above our policy target. But the good news is that it's $11.1 million, or 11, I'm doing math in my head, $11.6 million ahead of where we were 8 years ago. So our reserve dollar-wise has grown significantly. So this is the first year of 8 that we have not put money back into the general reserve. And I think I do appreciate the mayor's staff and the mayor's leadership to be able to put that together, because if you look at any of the media, nobody in the country that I've read about has the same kinds of reserve balances that we're fortunate to have. And in fact, I talked to somebody this morning outside of the state that they were just notified that they're cutting 20% of their police force. So we can be negative and we need to be concerned, but I also think that we need to step back and say we're not in real dire straits. We are concerned about where we're going, but we also need to understand that we're $11.6 million ahead of where we were when we started.
Any other questions for Gene? Thank you very much. We have any other city council open discussion? We've got an executive session scheduled. No other open discussion. Then I will take a motion to go into executive session for contract negotiations and a personnel matter.
I would move to adjourn into executive session. Let's.
Is there a second?
Second, Jamison.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are in executive session.